62-year-old Sam Whitmore stood on the windswept porch of his ranch house, reading the letter from his son for the third time. His weathered hands trembled slightly as he held the crisp stationery that had traveled all the way from San Francisco, bearing news that cut deeper than any Wyoming winter wind. "Pa." The letter began in his son David's careful script. "I hope this finds you well. Margaret and I have been talking, and we think it would be best if you didn't make the trip out here for Christmas this year. The children have been asking questions about your rough ways, and Margaret feels it might be disruptive to have you here during the holidays. Perhaps we can arrange a visit in the spring instead. Your loving son, David." Sam folded the letter carefully and slipped it back into his shirt pocket, where it seemed to burn against his chest like a brand. 23 years he'd been making that long journey to San Francisco every Christmas, ever since David had married Margaret Henderson and moved to the city to work in her father's banking business. 23 years of bringing handmade gifts for his grandchildren, of sleeping on the uncomfortable parlor sofa, of trying to mind his language and remember which fork to use at dinner. And now, for the first time since little Emma had been born 8 years ago, he wouldn't be welcome at his own family's Christmas table. Subscribe to our channel to follow this heartbreaking story of family estrangement and discover how one old rancher's broken heart led to an incredible act of love. Sam had built the W Ranch from nothing, starting with 100 head of cattle and a dream back in 1851. He'd worked 18-hour days, fought off rustlers and harsh weather, buried his beloved wife Sarah on the hill behind the house when fever took her 10 years ago. Everything he'd done, every sacrifice he'd made, had been for David, to give his son a legacy and a future. But David had never wanted the ranch life. Even as a boy, he'd preferred books to horses, preferring to help his mother in the kitchen rather than work cattle with his father. When Margaret Henderson had caught his eye during a visit to her aunt in Cheyenne, David had seen his chance to escape to a different kind of life, one where his hands stayed clean and his back didn't ache from honest labor. Sam had tried to understand, had even helped finance David's move to California and his entry into the banking business. But somewhere along the way, his son had grown ashamed of his rough frontier father, embarrassed by Sam's calloused hands and plain-spoken ways. "Rough ways," Sam muttered to himself, the words bitter in his mouth. He'd never raised a hand to David in anger, had never used profanity in front of the children, had always tried his best to be respectful in Margaret's elegant home. But apparently his best wasn't good enough for his educated, sophisticated son. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to see how this devastating rejection forces Sam to make a life-changing decision that will surprise everyone. Sam walked back into the ranch house, his boots echoing hollowly in the rooms that suddenly felt too large and too empty. The Christmas decorations he'd been planning to put up remained in their boxes, and the gifts he'd been working on for months, a hand-carved rocking horse for little Tommy and a quilted doll for Emma, sat unfinished in his workshop. For 41 years, this ranch had been his whole world, but now it felt more like a prison. What was the point of maintaining a legacy if his own family wanted nothing to do with it? What was the purpose of preserving the land and the traditions if David saw them as something to be ashamed of rather than treasured? That evening, Sam sat by the fire with a glass of whiskey and a decision that had been forming in his mind all day. He pulled out paper and pen, both items feeling foreign in his work-hardened hands, and began to write a letter of his own. "Jim," he wrote to his partner and neighbor, "I've decided to sell you my half of the W. I know we always talked about keeping the ranch in both our families, but circumstances have changed. I'll take whatever you think is fair. I trust your judgment. Your friend, Sam." The letter to the bank in Cheyenne was shorter, but just as momentous. Sam was liquidating his accounts, converting everything to cash. By the time Christmas arrived, he would be a man without land, without roots, without the identity that had defined him for most of his adult life. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to discover what Sam plans to do with his newfound freedom and how his journey will impact lives across the frontier. The next morning brought Jim Rodriguez, Sam's partner for over 15 years, riding hard across the frosted fields with Sam's letter clutched in his gloved hand. Jim was a good man, 10 years younger than Sam, but wise beyond his years, with a wife and 4 children who had always treated Sam like family. "Sam, what the hell is this?" Jim demanded, waving the letter as he dismounted his horse. "You can't just sell out like this. The W is your life." Sam poured coffee for both of them, his movements steady despite the turmoil in his heart. "Life changes, Jim. Sometimes a man has to change with it. This is about David, isn't it?" Jim asked quietly. About Christmas. Sam's silence was answer enough. Jim had been there for every Christmas departure, had seen the excitement in Sam's eyes as he prepared for his annual journey west. He'd also been there when Sam returned each year, increasingly quiet and subdued, though he'd never complained about his reception in San Francisco. "Sam, I can't let you do this," Jim said firmly. "This ranch is part of you. Selling it won't solve whatever is wrong between you and your son." "Maybe not," Sam agreed, "but it'll give me the freedom to do something meaningful with the time I have left. I'm 62, Jim. How many good years do I have ahead of me? 5, 10 if I'm lucky. I don't want to spend them alone on this ranch, waiting for visits from a son who's ashamed of me." Remember to subscribe to our channel to see how Jim's reaction leads to an unexpected conversation that will change both their lives forever. Jim studied his old friend's face, seeing the pain that Sam was trying so hard to hide. "What will you do? Where will you go?" Sam walked to the window and looked out at the land he'd loved for so long. "There's an orphanage in Denver that's been struggling to stay open. I read about it in the newspaper a few months back. They need funding, and they need help. I figure my money and my time might do more good there than sitting here feeling sorry for myself." "An orphanage," Jim repeated, surprise evident in his voice. "Children who don't have families to disappoint them," Sam said with a bitter smile. "Children who might actually appreciate an old man's stories and handmade gifts." Jim was quiet for a long moment, processing this revelation. Then he stood and walked to where Sam was standing, placing a firm hand on his friend's shoulder. "If you're determined to do this," Jim said slowly, "then I'll buy your half of the ranch. But I'm not going to let you just disappear into some orphanage and waste away. The W has been good to both of us, and part of what makes it special is your knowledge, your experience. I want you to stay involved, as a partner in name, if not in ownership." Sam started to protest, but Jim held up his hand. "Hear me out. You take the money from the sale, go to Denver, help those children. But when spring comes, when the orphanage is stable and running well, you come back here. Help me train my boys to run this place properly. Share your knowledge with the next generation." Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to discover Sam's emotional response to this generous offer and see how it sets the stage for an incredible journey of redemption. The offer touched something deep in Sam's heart, a place he'd thought had been permanently hardened by his son's rejection. "You do that for me, Sam. You've been more than a partner to me. You've been a mentor, a friend, and a second father to my children. Maria still talks about the dollhouse you built for her birthday, and the boys worship the ground you walk on. Just because David can't see your worth doesn't mean the rest of us are blind." Tears stung Sam's eyes, the first he'd allowed himself to shed since reading David's letter. "I don't know what I did wrong, Jim. I tried to be a good father, tried to give him everything he needed." "You were a good father," Jim said firmly. "Sometimes children grow up and make choices that break their parents' hearts. That doesn't mean you failed. It just means they lost their way." Sam wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, feeling something he hadn't felt in months: hope. Maybe Jim was right. Maybe there was still purpose to be found, still good to be done. Maybe his story wasn't over yet. "All right," Sam said finally. "We'll do it your way. But I want to leave as soon as possible. Christmas is only 3 weeks away, and those children deserve to have the best holiday I can give them." Jim grinned and extended his hand. "Partners, partners," Sam agreed, shaking Jim's hand with genuine warmth for the first time in weeks. Subscribe to our channel to see how Sam's journey to Denver becomes the beginning of an incredible adventure that will restore his faith in family and love. The next 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. Sam sold his personal belongings, keeping only what he could carry into saddlebags and a small wagon. Jim handled the legal paperwork with characteristic efficiency, ensuring that Sam received a fair price for his share of the ranch, while maintaining his connection to the land he loved. The night before his departure, Sam sat in his empty house, surrounded by boxes and memories. On the table before him lay the unfinished gifts he'd been making for his grandchildren, along with a letter he'd written but couldn't bring himself to send. "David," the letter began, "I want you to know that I understand your decision about Christmas. I haven't always been the father you needed, and I'm sorry for that. I'm going away for a while to try to do some good in the world while I still can. Maybe someday you'll understand why I needed to do this. Maybe someday we'll find our way back to each other. Until then, please tell Emma and Tommy that their grandfather loves them, even if he won't be there to show it this Christmas. Your father, Sam." Sam folded the letter and placed it in an envelope, but he didn't seal it. He wasn't sure he would ever send it, wasn't sure David would even care to read it. Instead, he placed it in his Bible, along with the photograph of Sarah that had kept him company through 10 lonely years. Tomorrow would bring a new chapter, a chance to channel his heartbreak into something positive. And for the first time since receiving David's letter, Sam felt something approaching peace. The Denver Children's Home sat on the outskirts of the bustling Colorado City, a 3-story brick building that had seen better days, paint peeled from the window frames. Several shutters hung at odd angles, and the front yard was more mud than grass. But to Sam Whitmore, stepping down from his wagon on a cold December morning, it looked like exactly where he needed to be. Mrs. Eleanor Hartwell, the director of the orphanage, met him at the front door with a mixture of surprise and barely concealed desperation. She was a woman in her 50s, thin from years of stretching meager resources to feed hungry children, but her eyes held a warmth that spoke of genuine love for the dozens of children in her care. "Mr. Whitmore," she said, extending a work-worn hand, "I received your telegram, but I must admit I'm not entirely sure what you're proposing. You want to donate money to the orphanage, but you also want to stay here and help with the children?" Sam removed his hat and smiled, the first genuine smile he'd managed in weeks. "Ma'am, I've got more money than I know what to do with and more time than I can fill. Seems to me you've got children who need both. I'm hoping we can help each other." Subscribe to our channel to follow Sam's heartwarming introduction to the Denver Children's Home and see how his arrival changes everything for dozens of forgotten children. Mrs. Hartwell led Sam through the orphanage, and with each room they visited, his heart broke a little more. The children ranged in age from toddlers to teenagers, all wearing clothes that had been mended too many times to count. Their faces lit up with curiosity at the sight of the tall, weathered stranger, but Sam could see the wariness there too, the careful distance maintained by children who had learned not to expect too much from adults. "We're currently caring for 43 children," Mrs. Hartwell explained as they walked through a dormitory, where narrow beds were squeezed together to maximize space. "Most are genuine orphans. Parents lost to disease, accidents, or violence. Some were simply abandoned by families who couldn't afford to feed them." "What's your biggest need?" Sam asked, though he could see the answer everywhere he looked. "Everything," Mrs. Hartwell said with a rueful laugh. "Food, clothing, medical care, proper beds, heat for the winter, but mostly we need hope. These children have lost so much, and it's hard to help them believe in a better future when we're struggling just to survive day by day." Sam nodded thoughtfully. "What if money wasn't an issue? What would you do differently?" Mrs. Hartwell stopped walking and turned to look at him with sudden intensity. "Mr. Whitmore, I don't know what your circumstances are, but I want you to understand something before you make any commitments. These children have been disappointed by adults more times than I can count. People make promises they don't keep, offer help they don't deliver. If you're thinking of making a grand gesture and then disappearing when the novelty wears off, I'd rather you left right now." Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to see how Sam responds to this challenge and proves his commitment to the children who need him most. Sam met her gaze steadily. "Mrs. Hartwell, 3 weeks ago I received a letter from my son telling me not to come for Christmas because my rough ways might upset his children. I sold my half of a ranch I'd spent 40 years building and came here. because I believe these children deserve better than what they're getting. I'm not looking for novelty or a project to amuse me. I'm looking for a family that might actually want me around." The honesty in his voice seemed to convince Mrs. Hartwell of his sincerity. "In that case," she said softly, "let me show you what we could do with proper funding." They spent the next 2 hours touring every corner of the orphanage, from the leaky attic where the older boys slept to the kitchen where Mrs. Patterson, the cook, performed daily miracles with ingredients that should have fed half as many people. Sam took notes, asked questions, and began forming a picture of what the Denver Children's Home could become with adequate resources. "The building is sound," Mrs. Hartwell explained, "but it needs extensive repairs. The roof leaks, the heating system is unreliable, and we're desperately overcrowded. Ideally, we'd expand, add a proper schoolroom, maybe even a workshop where the older children could learn trades." "What about Christmas?" Sam asked. "What do you usually do for the children during the holidays?" Mrs. Hartwell's expression grew. "Sad, we try our best, but there's not much we can offer. A special meal if we can afford it. Maybe a small gift for each child if donors have been generous. But mostly we just try to keep everyone fed and warm, and hope they don't notice how different their Christmas is from what other children enjoy." Sam felt a familiar ache in his chest, but this time it wasn't the pain of rejection. It was the pain of seeing need that he had the power to address. Remember to subscribe to our channel to discover the incredible Christmas surprise Sam is planning for these deserving children. That afternoon, Sam met with Mrs. Hartwell and the orphanage's small board of directors to discuss his proposal. The men and women around the table listened with growing amazement as Sam outlined his plans for funding not just immediate needs, but long-term improvements that would transform the institution. "I'm prepared to donate $50,000 immediately," Sam announced, enjoying the gasps of surprise from around the table. "That should cover building repairs, expansion, proper furnishings, and enough of an endowment to ensure the orphanage can operate independently for years to come." "Mr. Whitmore," stammered Dr. Andrews, the chairman of the board, "that's more than 10 times our annual budget. Are you certain you want to make such a substantial commitment?" Sam smiled. "Doctor, I've spent my whole life accumulating wealth, so I could pass it on to my family. Since my family doesn't want it, I'd rather use it to help children who do need it." "What do you want in return?" asked Mrs. Hartwell, still somewhat dazed by the magnitude of the offer. "I want to stay," Sam said simply. "I want to help with the children, teach them what I know, be the grandfather they've never had, and I want to give them a Christmas they'll never forget." Mrs. Hartwell's eyes filled with tears. "Mr. Whitmore, I think that's the most wonderful offer we've ever received. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to see how Sam's presence begins to transform the lives of individual children in ways that money alone never could." Over the next week, Sam threw himself into life at the orphanage with an energy that surprised even him. He organized repair crews to fix the roof and heating system, arranged for new furniture and clothing, and set up accounts with local merchants to ensure the children would never go hungry again. But more importantly, he began to connect with the children themselves. 8-year-old Tommy Patterson, who had been abandoned at the orphanage as a baby, was fascinated by Sam's stories of ranch life and begged to learn how to whittle. 12-year-old Sarah Mitchell, shy and withdrawn after losing her parents in a mining accident, slowly began to open up when Sam patiently listened to her read from the books he'd bought for the new library. "You're different from other adults," 6-year-old Lucy Henderson told Sam one evening as he helped her practice writing her letters. "You don't act like you have somewhere else you'd rather be." The comment hit Sam like a physical blow, reminding him painfully of his own grandchildren, who had learned from their mother to see his visits as an intrusion rather than a gift. But here, in this place filled with children who had nothing, his presence was treasured rather than tolerated. "Lucy," Sam said gently, "there's nowhere else in the world I'd rather be than right here with you and all the other children." And for the first time in months, Sam realized he was telling the absolute truth. Subscribe to our channel to witness the magical Christmas Eve that Sam created for the children, and see how his broken heart found healing in the most unexpected place. Christmas Eve arrived with a blanket of fresh snow that transformed the orphanage grounds into a winter wonderland. Sam had been working for days with Mrs. Hartwell and the staff to prepare a celebration that would create memories to last the children a lifetime. The main hall had been decorated with evergreen boughs and handmade ornaments created by the children themselves. A massive Christmas tree, the largest anyone had ever seen in the orphanage, stood in the corner, its branches heavy with gifts that Sam had personally selected for each child. But the real magic wasn't in the decorations or the presents. It was in the faces of the children as they sat around the fireplace, listening to Sam tell stories of Christmases past, of sledding adventures and winter storms, of the simple joys that came from being surrounded by people who cared about you. "Mr. Sam," asked 10-year-old Billy Morgan, "do you miss your family on Christmas?" The question hung in the air, and Sam felt 43 pairs of eyes watching him, waiting for his answer. He could have lied, could have given them a simple response that wouldn't require explanation. Instead, he chose to be honest. "I do miss them," Sam said quietly. "But sometimes missing people teaches us to appreciate the people we have right here with us. And right now, I can't imagine anywhere I'd rather be than with all of you. Remember to subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories from the American frontier that prove family isn't always about blood, but about love, acceptance, and the courage to start over." Spring arrived at the Denver Children's Home with an explosion of color and new life that seemed to mirror the transformation that had taken place within its walls. The building itself was unrecognizable from the rundown structure Sam had first encountered for months earlier. Fresh paint gleamed on every surface, new windows let in abundant sunlight, and the addition Sam had funded provided proper classrooms, a workshop, and private bedrooms for the older children. But the most remarkable changes were in the children themselves. Well-fed, properly clothed, and surrounded by adults who genuinely cared about their welfare, they had blossomed into confident, happy young people who saw the world as a place of possibility rather than hardship. Sam stood in the workshop he'd established, watching with pride as 16-year-old Michael O'Brien carefully shaped a piece of wood into what would become a toy horse for one of the younger children. The boy had arrived at the orphanage 2 years earlier, bitter and angry after his father had been killed in a mining accident, and his mother had died of grief shortly after. Now he was Sam's most dedicated apprentice, learning carpentry skills that would serve him well when he aged out of the orphanage system. "Mr. Sam," Michael said without looking up from his work, "Mrs. Hartwell wants to see you in her office. Says you have a visitor." Subscribe to our channel to follow this emotional conclusion and discover how Sam's journey of heartbreak led to the most beautiful reunion imaginable. Sam made his way to Mrs. Hartwell's office, wondering who might be calling on him. His correspondence with the outside world had been minimal since arriving in Denver, limited to occasional letters from Jim Rodriguez updating him on the ranch and business matters related to his investments. But when he opened the office door, Sam's heart nearly stopped. Standing by the window, looking older and more careworn than Sam remembered, was his son David. "Hello, Pa," David said quietly, his voice carrying a mixture of shame and hope that Sam hadn't heard in years. For a moment, neither man moved. Then David stepped forward, his eyes taking in his father's appearance, noting the color that had returned to Sam's cheeks, the spark of purpose that had replaced the defeated resignation. David remembered from their last meeting. "You look good, Pa," David said softly. "Better than I've seen you in years, David," Sam managed, still struggling to believe his son was actually there. "What are you doing here?" "How did you find me?" "Jim Rodriguez," David replied. "He wrote to me, told me what you'd done, where you'd gone. He said if I had any sense left, I'd come to Denver and see what my father had accomplished. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to witness this powerful father-son reunion and see how pride and misunderstanding gave way to love and reconciliation. Mrs. Hartwell quietly excused herself, leaving father and son alone to navigate the treacherous waters of their damaged relationship. Sam gestured to a chair, and David sat down heavily, as if the weight of his guilt was making it difficult to remain standing. "Pa, I need to apologize," David began, his voice breaking slightly. "That letter I sent, telling you not to come for Christmas, it was cruel and unfair. Margaret had been pressuring me for months to distance us from what she called our rustic connections, and I let her convince me that you were somehow embarrassing to our family." Sam's first instinct was to offer comfort, to brush aside his son's apology and pretend the hurt had never existed. But his months at the orphanage had taught him the value of honest communication, and he owed both himself and David the truth. "Your letter nearly broke me," Sam said quietly. "I'd spent 23 years trying to be the grandfather your children deserved, trying to fit into your world even when it felt foreign to me, to learn that my best efforts weren't good enough, that my presence was actually unwelcome. It made me question everything I thought I knew about family." David's face crumpled with guilt and remorse. "I know, Pa. I know how much I hurt you, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. But I need you to know something. After you left, after Christmas came and went without you, the children kept asking where Grandpa Sam was. They missed your stories, your handmade gifts, your patience with their questions. And Margaret?" Sam asked, unable to keep a slight edge. From his voice, David's expression grew sheepish. "Margaret had to admit that Christmas felt empty without you. The expensive store-bought gifts couldn't compete with the rocking horse you'd made for Tommy, or the dollhouse you'd built for Emma. She realized that what she'd seen as roughness was actually authenticity, and authenticity was something our family had been lacking." Remember to subscribe to our channel to see how this conversation leads to an unexpected revelation about the true meaning of family and belonging. "David," Sam said carefully, "I appreciate you coming here, and I'm grateful for your apology. But I need you to understand something. These children, this place, they've become my family now. I've found purpose here that I never had before, and I won't abandon them. I wouldn't ask you to," David said quickly. "Pa, you should see this place. See what you've accomplished. Mrs. Hartwell gave me a tour before you arrived, and it's incredible. The children here adore you, and it's obvious that you've found something here that you never had with us." Sam studied his son's face, seeing genuine admiration there for perhaps the first time in years. "What are you saying, David?" "I'm saying that I was wrong about everything. I thought success meant leaving behind our origins, becoming something different from what we were. But seeing what you've built here, seeing how these children look at you with such love and respect, I realize that I've been the one who was lacking, not you." David reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "I have something for you. It's from Emma and Tommy. They wrote it together, asking if they could come visit their grandfather in Denver this summer. They want to meet the children you've been helping, and they want to learn from you the way these kids have been learning." Sam's hands trembled as he opened the letter, written in the careful script of children who had been practicing their penmanship. "Dear Grandpa Sam," it began, "we miss you so much. Daddy told us you're helping children who don't have families, and we think that's the most wonderful thing ever. Could we please come visit you? We want to help too. Love, Emma and Tommy." Tears ran freely down Sam's cheeks as he read the simple, heartfelt words. "They really want to come here. They've talked of nothing else since I told them where you were," David assured him. "And Margaret, well, she's been doing some soul-searching of her own. She wants to make amends, Pa. She wants to be part of what you're building here." Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to discover how this reunion evolves into something even more beautiful and meaningful than anyone expected. Over the next few days, David stayed at the orphanage as Sam's guest, witnessing firsthand the remarkable community his father had helped create. He watched Sam teach carpentry to the older boys, saw him read bedtime stories to the little ones, observed the easy affection between his father and children who had every reason to distrust adults. "He's different here," David confided to Mrs. Hartwell one evening as they watched Sam play checkers with a group of children in the main hall. "More relaxed, more himself than I've seen him in years. He's found his calling," Mrs. Hartwell replied. "Some people are born to be parents, others to be teachers, still others to be leaders. Your father was born to be a grandfather to children who need one." David nodded, understanding for the first time why his father had seemed so stiff and uncomfortable in the formal atmosphere of the San Francisco house. Here, surrounded by children who valued his stories and skills rather than judging his rough edges. Sam could be authentically himself. "Mrs. Hartwell," David said slowly, "would there be room here for other visitors? My wife and children want to come for an extended stay this summer. Not as guests, but as volunteers. My wife has teaching experience, and the children are old, enough to help with the younger ones." Mrs. Hartwell smiled. "Mr. Whitmore, this orphanage exists because your father believed that family isn't just about blood relations, but about people who choose to care for each other. If your family wants to become part of our extended family, we'd welcome you with open arms." Subscribe to our channel to see how this story of rejection and redemption reaches its beautiful conclusion, proving that love always finds a way. On David's last morning in Denver, father and son sat together on the front porch of the orphanage, watching the children play in the yard that Sam's generosity had transformed into a proper playground. The silence between them was comfortable now, filled with understanding rather than tension. "Pa," David said finally, "I want you to know that I understand now why you had to leave Wyoming. You weren't running away from us, you were running toward something you needed to find." "I found more than I ever expected," Sam admitted. "I thought I was just trying to use my money and time to help some orphan children. Instead, I found a purpose that makes me excited to get up every morning, a family that values what I have to offer, and a sense of peace I haven't felt since your mother died." "Will you come back to visit us?" David asked. "The children need to see their grandfather in his element, need to understand what real strength and character look like." Sam smiled. "I'll come visit, but David, I need you to understand that this is my home now. These children are my family. I'll always love you and Emma and Tommy, but my responsibility is here now." "I wouldn't have it any other way," David replied. "And Pa, thank you for showing me what it really means to be a man. It's not about money or status or fitting into someone else's idea of respectability. It's about using your gifts to make the world better for the people around you." Remember to subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories from the American frontier that prove the strongest families are built on love, respect, and the courage to be authentically yourself. That evening, as David's train pulled away from the Denver station, Sam stood on the platform feeling a sense of completion he'd never expected to experience. His relationship with his son wasn't repaired overnight, but it was on solid ground. For the first time in years, built on mutual respect rather than obligation. When he returned to the orphanage, Sam found the children waiting for him in the main hall, having sensed that this was an important day in their benefactor's life. 8-year-old Lucy Henderson stepped forward with a handmade card, signed by every child in the institution. "Mr. Sam," she said solemnly, "we want you to know that you're the best grandfather any of us could have asked for. We love you, and we're so glad you came to be our family." Sam knelt down to Lucy's level, accepting the card with hands that shook with emotion. "Lucy, I want all of you to know something. I came here thinking I was going to help you, but you've helped me more than you'll ever know. You've taught me that family isn't about who shares your blood, but about who shares your heart." As the children gathered around him for their nightly story, Sam reflected on the journey that had brought him to this moment. A letter that had broken his heart had led to the greatest adventure of his life. The son who had rejected him had ultimately led him to dozens of children who needed him desperately. And somewhere in Wyoming, on the ranch he'd helped build, Jim Rodriguez would be receiving a letter explaining that while Sam would return to visit as promised, his permanent home was now in Denver, with the family he'd chosen and who had chosen him in return. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales from the Old West that celebrate the transformative power of love, generosity, and the courage to start over when life takes an unexpected turn. Years later, when the children of the Denver Children's Home had grown up and started families of their own, they would tell their own children about the gruff old rancher who had appeared in their lives like an answer to prayer. They would speak of his gentle hands that could soothe any hurt, his patient voice that could make any story come alive, and his generous heart that had shown them what unconditional love looked like. And in San Francisco, Emma and Tommy Whitmore would grow up knowing that their grandfather was a hero, not because he had built a successful ranch or accumulated wealth, but because he had used his gifts to transform the lives of children who had nothing, proving that the most important legacy a person can leave isn't what they accumulated for themselves, but what they gave away to others. The letter that had once seemed like an ending had actually been a beginning, the first chapter, in a story of redemption that would inspire generations to come.